It was a Sunday in late July 1968. The Beatles were in the middle of recording one of the most ambitious albums of their career, the White Album. Creativity was overflowing, but the energy inside the studio had grown tense, even claustrophobic. They needed a break, not just from the recording process, but from the image the world had come to expect from them. They wanted something fresh, new photos, new visuals, something that reflected who they were now. Four artists on the edge of transformation. The idea was simply to spend a day exploring London, taking candid, expressive photos, far away from sterile studios and tired publicity shots. That morning, the band gathered at Paul McCartney's home in St. John's Wood. The convoy included not just the Fab Four, but a collection of photographers, assistants, friends, and even family members. Among the group were a few unexpected faces: Paul's girlfriend, a young child, and even a parrot. The mission was spontaneous but intentional capture, a day in the life of the Beatles, unfiltered and real. Their first stop was atop a newspaper building in central London, where a rooftop studio designed like a giant glass conservatory awaited them. The sunlight streamed through the glass, and a wind machine kicked up their hair, creating a moment of visual magic. The band stood side by side, their iconic silhouettes dancing in the light. One photographer later recalled the way their faces seemed to morph into something monumental, like the rock-carved visages on Mount Rushmore. From there, they journeyed west to a small theater in Notting Hill, a repurposed church with character in every corner. Inside, they drank tea, chatted casually, and posed in the old bar. A zookeeper unexpectedly appeared with a brightly colored parrot, which happily perched on Ringo's shoulder. The surreal charm of the moment wasn't lost on anyone. It was as if the city itself had become a stage for their mischief. At one point, the group gathered around an old piano, with Paul casually playing while a parrot clung to his arm. It was a scene of joyful chaos music, birdsong, and laughter filling the dusty room. They weren't posing as rock stars, they were simply being themselves, and the cameras followed. They continued across the city, weaving their way through the quiet Sunday streets of London. It was a different city on Sundays, peaceful, still, almost intimate. In Highgate, they stopped near a cemetery. John wanted to be photographed next to Karl Marx's grave, but the gates were locked. Undeterred, the group posed outside a nearby house. Someone had brought along a set of rosettes as props, and soon the band was pretending to campaign for office in the middle of the street. As they moved through London's neighborhoods, each location seemed to unlock a new side of the group. At Old Street, they climbed onto a rooftop ledge, carefully balancing themselves on a wooden plank just to get the shot. They danced, shadow-boxed, and played up to the camera. Then, Paul staged a dramatic fall off the edge, nearly real, causing a mix of panic and hilarity. The rest of the group mock-restrained George, who was attacking Paul in jest, supposedly as revenge for a prank from years earlier. Every moment was alive with creativity. In a nearby park, they encountered a man asleep on a bench. Without disturbing him, the band quietly surrounded him and posed, as if they were part of some strange dream. The man never stirred. The image was perfect. The Beatles in their prime, next to an unaware Londoner deep in sleep. A snapshot of two worlds quietly colliding. Children played nearby, their eyes wide with wonder. The Beatles handed out autographs, and even let one child sit on Paul's knee. It was a moment those kids and their families would remember forever. One boy would later tell how his grandmother kept that signed piece of paper for decades, a simple artifact from an extraordinary encounter. The next stop was along the Thames, in the historic district of Wapping. Here, the atmosphere changed. The cobblestone streets, industrial cranes, and Georgian buildings cast a gritty, cinematic mood. Paul removed his shirt and shoes, wrapped himself in chains, and posed as though shackled by the city itself. The image was raw and symbolic, perhaps of fame's weight or the desire to break free. Suddenly, John lay down in the dirt, motionless. The others gathered around him, peering down with mock concern. To one photographer, the image felt hauntingly real, like a staged death scene. It echoed the protests of the time, the emotional intensity of 1968, and the hidden struggles within the band itself. The moment lasted only seconds, but it produced some of the most powerful images of the day. The group continued wandering, barely staying in one place long enough to attract crowds, though that didn't last. Eventually, a wave of fans descended on their location, forcing them to pack up quickly. The city was beginning to catch on. By late afternoon, they were back at Paul's house. Here, in his lush garden filled with statues and whimsical stone figures, the group posed for one last series of photographs. But there was one final destination, a strange futuristic structure tucked at the back of the property, a geodesic glass dome with a hydraulic floor that lifted up into the canopy like something out of Doctor Who. The dome was Paul's personal meditation space, a quiet sanctuary where he'd retreat to reflect, write, or stargaze. But on this day, it became a makeshift studio. Inside, the Beatles sat with their dog and a few friends, enjoying the calm. Some shared a joint, others just sat in silence, the warm light glowing through the glass. One final photo captured Paul gazing into the distance, his profile lit beautifully against the dome's transparent walls. It was quiet, intimate, a sharp contrast to the chaos earlier in the day. By evening, the photo shoot was over. The band had traveled the city, playing, posing, and reflecting. They had produced over 400 photographs, moments of humor, thoughtfulness, rebellion, and unfiltered humanity. The Mad Day Out wasn't about capturing perfection. It was about capturing truth, who the Beatles were at that exact moment in time. It was the summer of 1968. The world was changing, so were they. And for one wild, beautiful day, the greatest band in the world gave the world something rare, a glimpse behind the myth into the magic.